wonderful job. And it takes me to the far corners of the country, and I get to meet people like Lawrence Wynn, class of 1934, whose gift of this collection is celebrated. Larry, would you join me in the First speaker tonight is Dr. Pamela Simpson, the Ernest and Marjorie Williams Professor of Art at Washington State. She's going to speak on landscapes, all of these beautiful paintings that Evelyn used to describe this work.
Thank you. What they asked me to do is speak very briefly about some of the key points in Evelyn Dawson's life and to make a few comments about the paintings that you've seen here. Evelyn Dawson was born in Oaxaca, New Jersey in 1909, and by the age of 18, she had a dual career as a fashion designer and a dancer. Later, she wrote poetry and 4 novels. And still later, she made this impressive body of paintings, some of which we have the privilege to see here today. When one looks at Dawson's career, the overriding impression is what an extraordinarily creative person that she was, and what an original creator she was. In her youth, she explored the world of modern dance, working with the famed Ruth St. Denis and her Denishaw dancers. And Dawson's greatest fame came when she worked as a fashion designer, especially from 1949 to 1963, when she revolutionized women's fashion under the name of Susie Perez. Now, I think it may actually be sort of appropriate that we're holding this exhibit today in the Commerce School, because she was a very successful businesswoman. She did what no one had done before. She designed original American fashions that women could afford. They were not Paris knockoffs, they were instead original designs. And they caught the youthful spirit of the 1950s. And believe me, she was a smashing success. In fact, at one time, more women were wearing Susie Perez designs than all the high couture labels combined. In 1991, the prestigious Fashion Institute of Technology in New York honored her work with a major retrospective. Harold Coda and Richard Martin, the curators for that exhibit, called her, quote, an American original, and noted her joyous sense of continuing experiment. Well, our purpose in coming together today is to celebrate another aspect of that continuing experiment, the wonderful legacy that she has left us in these paintings. And she didn't start painting until she was about 54. And just as in all of her other enterprises, she was largely self-taught. And it is that marvelous sense of creativity that comes across in this work. Her delight in pattern, in texture, in surface, her wonderful sense of color. All of this, I think we might expect from a woman who has spent a good part of her life working with fabric and design. But what is surprising to me is also that sense of wonder, the mystery that we can find in her abstractions. Her husband, Larry Wynn, has said that she called them inscapes because they came from within. They may evoke the idea of nature, and some actually we can identify as plants and foliage. But many of them are also total abstractions that evoke emotional associations with the natural world. The purple depth of a dream, the heat of a fire, the energy of the spreading tendrils of a plant. Vasily Kandinsky, another abstractionist, once said that he tried to find forms that struck expressive chords and set up corresponding vibrations in a viewer's soul. Well, that may sound a little highfalutin, but I think something like that actually happens with abstraction. And I think it's something like that that we experience when we look at Evelyn Dawson's painting. We may not know what the image is, but we respond to it nonetheless. We respond to the color, the shape, the texture, the movement. It is a visual response, but it's also clearly an emotional one. She makes us feel something of her own creative state. Jackson Pollock once described the act of painting this way. Painting is a state of being, of self-discovery. Every good artist paints what he, or in this case she, is. I love that statement, and I think it fits so well with what we're looking at in these paintings. Painting is a state of being, of self-discovery. Every good artist paints what she is. So we come together today to celebrate this extraordinary life and achievement of this remarkably creative woman. Washington and Lee is honored to have these beautiful paintings in our midst. It is a legacy that we will treasure in Mr. Wynn. We thank you.
Pleasure and a great honor to accept these beautiful paintings by Evelyn and Dawson Wynn on behalf of Washington and Lee University. We are pleased to have this exhibition here in the Williams School through the end of the academic year, and the paintings on display in the Lakeland Library in perpetuity. It is fitting that these works of art have found a home at Washington and Lee University, not only because of Mr. Wynn's status as but also because these paintings stand as a true legacy to a woman who expressed a remarkable degree of creativity in a wide array of fields. There is no doubt that Evelyn Wynn was a prolific creator. As a designer, she helped launch a new fashion industry. Professor Simpson has told us. As a dancer, she performed with one of the most innovative troupes in the first half of this century. As a writer, she produced many works, including novels, poetry, and musings. As a painter, she created more than 100 works of art, most in the abstract expressionist tradition. The paintings we see here today are but a tantalizing glimpse of that large body of work. In many ways, this exhibition and permanent display are also a tribute to the man who inspired much of the creativity that we see here. A prolific creator in his own right, Larry Wynn, a member of the class of 1934, has enjoyed a life as diverse and exciting as his wife's. Here is a man who sang with Dinah Shore and Billie Holiday, who played semi-professional basketball and baseball, wrote songs for Louis Jordan, enjoyed a highly successful career in radio during its halcyon days of the 30s and 40s before television usurped the magic of the audio airwaves. That creative drive continues today in Larry's songwriting and in the columns he writes for the Bergen, New Jersey newspaper. It is our hope that through this exhibition, the permanent display in the library, and the brochure that tells this marvelous story of the life of this talented woman, our students and other visitors to the campus will come to appreciate and understand the life of Evelyn Dawson Wynn, and that they will come to know this great creative spirit. So we thank you, Larry, for your wonderful gift to Washington University.
Hobbling around on a effective foot here. I grew up with the old adage that you never trust a man who wears white socks and isn't playing a game. I gotta wear white socks for it. I want to thank you all for coming to this presentation. And the size of the crowd is exceeded only by the quality of the crowd. And so I see you all. Glad you're here. I think that this is probably, although I've spent a long and eventful life on this planet, I think that this is probably the second most exciting day of my life. The first was when I added my name to that of Evelyn Dawson. And started an odyssey of happiness that I think very few men since the beginning of time have ever experienced. I spent about 32 years wallowing in a kind of environment and excitement that no man has a right to respect. I want to convey to you, if I can, things about Evelyn Dawson Wynn that her paintings cannot reveal. I won't take long because I went into a two-room. They would be here till midnight. But I'll be short. But at the same time, when I'm through, if any of you have any questions about her or her various activities, I'll be happy to answer. I was in an airplane a short time ago, and we ran into some bad weather. I must confess that while I was bouncing around up there, I started to think of my own mortality. And it occurred to me that most of us spend a lifetime here without ever really knowing why we were here, except maybe to perpetuate the species. But she knew. From a very early age, she knew she was here to create. And she never wavered from that God-given gift and purpose. She had the focus, the dedication, determination, the patience of an Indian holy man. And nothing could take her from that target. She was proof positive that you don't have to go to college to be educated. Born into a middle-class family with English, Irish, French, and German roots in her genes, she never went past high school. But she was probably the most educated person that I've ever met in my life. You could take your subject, anything, philosophy, religion, psychiatry, the social sciences, all the arts, anything. And she could go one-on-one with the experts and more than hold her own. The extent of her knowledge was amazing. And her intuition and sensitivity was sometimes almost unworldly. She thought her image, that the image she presented, was very important. And as a result, she never left the house without being perfectly dressed and accessorized for the occasion, even if it was going to the local supermarket to shop. Nobody, and I include myself, ever saw her walking around in curlers or the normal paraphernalia. She kept that image going, always. At a time when women had abandoned hats, she wore them on practically every occasion. And women constantly were stopping her on the street to comment on how great they thought she looked. She carried herself like a queen, but she was always accessible to everyone, whether it was a waitress in some out-of-the-way diner late at night, or to the CEO of some giant corporation. Whoever the person was opposite her, she had the power of presenting a simpatico feeling between the two of them. And she was that way all her life. She never had any children, but she mothered the world. That didn't only go for people. At one time, she had 9 stray cats living with her in Park Avenue apartment, much to the consternation of the rest of the country. In those days, there was a group of men who had long since written their names into the history of American crime. They were called Murder Incorporated. 2 of the prominent men in that group, most prominent, were named Albert Anastasia and Three-Fingered Brown. They controlled a lot of various legitimate businesses, including firms in the garment business. And they, of course, knew about Evelyn. Evelyn was a beautiful woman, and men were constantly after her. One of those men, unfortunately, was Three-Fingered Brown. And when a man like Three-Fingered Brown focuses on a woman, it's not a happy situation, because they have a way of becoming unavoidable. But something happened with Mr. Brown, so far as Evelyn Dawson was concerned. There was something about her that awed him. And while he had never met her personally, he did not try to force his attentions on her, but he made his presence known by sending little gifts like flowers, candy, perfume, little knickknacks that he thought might get her attention, and frequent calls that she never took. One day, his phone rang, and on the other end of the line was Evelyn. She said, "Mr. Brown, are you free for lunch today?" Was he ever? A little while later, they were seated in a restaurant in the district there, had lunch. They talked about small things like the fashion business and what was happening in the business and so forth and so on. And when the lunch was over, he sat back and he looked at her. And he said, "Miss Dawson, why did you call me for lunch today?" And she told him why. She told him about a couple who lived in the same building with her. The man was a sort of half-successful designer. The woman was his sister. And when they were children, she was a younger sister. When they were children, he dropped her by accident and and left her a cripple for life. She was a hunchback, and she wasn't pleasant to look upon. She said, the woman is a terrific bookkeeper. She's marvelous at her job, but you can't hold a job. Because every place that employs her, although they think her work is terrific, after a while, they're just put off by her appearance. And there's something about her that they don't like to look at. And she loses the job. He said, why are you telling me this? She said, because, Mr. Brown, I know you're a powerful man. I know you have various businesses in the garment district. I'd like for you to give this lady a job. And he said, have her in my office at 8 o'clock Monday morning. If she's half as good as you say she is, she's got a job. Evelyn said, thank you very much. Then he leaned forward and looked into her eyes and he said, now that I've done something for you, what are you going to do for me? She said, I've already done what I'm going to do for you. I've given you a job to do at least one good thing in your life. And for a long moment, this murderer looked into her eyes. And then he sat back and the creases in his face started to move into what I think he meant to be a grin. And he said, and I hope you'll excuse this expression, he said, lady, you got a lot of balls. He said, I'll tell you what I said goes. You have her in my office 8 o'clock Monday morning. She's good. She's got a job. He said another thing. If you ever need me, if you're ever in trouble, and you need my help, you call me. I'll be there. He said, I'm never going to call you again. But if you want to call me, I'll be very happy to get your call. With his watch, he said, I got to get back to a meeting. And they broke up for lunch. Now, 5 things happened in that call. Number 1, the woman got the job, and she stayed there until the day she died. The gifts for Brown kept coming. He never called again. She never called him. 5th one was when his peers finally murdered him. She said a prayer. So she had great personal pride. She never did anything that she didn't put forth her best effort. Nothing. She wouldn't do anything where she couldn't do her best. It brings up another little story. When she was very young, in the very early teens, she showed tremendous promise at the piano. They were sure she was going to be a world-famous piano concert. She could play the most intricate pieces with great flair and style. A few years later, when she started her dancing career and her designing career, at times they were both running concurrent. She'd be designing by day and dancing by night. There was no more time for practice. And And one night, when we were in our apartment in New York, and I was at the piano, doodling with my silly little chords, and she told me about her early experience with the piano. And I said, Evelyn, it's a sin that you never play again. I've never heard you go, why don't you sit down and play me something? She said, I could do that now. I said, no, come on. You should be playing the piano again. So finally she sat down and she started to play. Now to my tin ear, it sounded pretty good. I thought it was really good. But after a few minutes, she stood up and she said, Larry, I'm never going to be able to capture what I had. She said, there isn't time now for me to do the kind of practice that will bring me back to that. So please don't ever ask me to play again. She enjoyed hearing me play, which is a joke. We went to concerts with world famous pianists, which she enjoyed, but she never again touched the piano. Because she knew what would come out would not be her best effort, but she would do it. Her code of morals was high, and she demanded the same of people in her orbit, always at the highest level. She was different from most other women, but I don't mean that in a negative manner. Remember, she had a mission, and she wasn't going to let any of the I'll call it the normal little things that women do to pass the time, such as gossiping with the girls, going to the beauty parlor, shopping, picking up things you really don't need just for the fun of shopping. She never did any of those things because to her, in her ball game, that was a waste of time. Now, she wasn't arrogant. She was perfectly aware that other people had other tastes, and she never questioned anybody else's habits. She never intruded, either physically or with her mind, unless she was invited to. She recognized other people's space, but she did her thing, and other people did theirs. She used to love to browse. She was blessed with a photographic memory. And she could walk into a store, a department store, walk through the whole thing, or specialty shop. And she'd see everything that was there and remember where it was. And it gave her a big kick to see what was out in the market and what was attracting people and what it was doing and the prices and yada yada. She never hardly ever bought anything because, number one, she made most of her own things. And number two, she knew too much about the true cost of things. And nobody was going to stick her with something that she knew was far above its value. But she remembered everything, and 6 or 8 weeks later, a couple of months later, she'd meet a friend, and the friend would say, you know something, I've been looking for a multicolored blouse with a detached white collar. I can't find it. You can't find it anyplace. She said, oh, go to Saks Fifth Avenue on the 3rd floor when you get off the elevator to the right. They've got it right there. And sure enough, there it would be. That tickled her no end. That was a great pleasure for her. She changed my life completely. Oh, how she changed my life. When we met, I was a 49-year-old adolescent. I was unruly, wild, undisciplined, unprincipled, wrapped up in myself. friends and mine too said, don't marry him. It's bad news. He'll break your heart, bring you a lot of pain. But she in her wisdom, and I thank God for that, she knew what they couldn't do. And we were married. In 1 year, she changed me from a 49-year-old adolescent to a 50-year-old adult. I have found that I hit the jackpot. I found finally the woman that meant more to me than I meant to myself. Meant more to me than I meant to myself. And that was an eye-opener. And that was really how I knew I was finally in love, and not just dazzled by the brightness of the stars. It's been 6 years since she's gone. But she's never left me. Some people think I'm still a mourning, but it's not that. It's that she still maintains a terrific influence on my life. I find myself doing things that I know would make her proud, and avoiding doing things that I know would make her unhappy. She filled a tremendous void in my life. You know, I think that every man should have some kind of religion, something more powerful than himself. And I personally don't follow any particularly institutionalized religion. For me, it's enough that I think I have God inside of me. And Evelyn came along, and she became my religion. And the combination of her and whatever part of God is to me has been for me the greatest religion of all. For me. Well, that's the Evelyn Dawson I wanted you to know, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
One final portion of the program here. It's been said that life is one great void, Larry, filled by the billions of acts and gestures that constitute human activity. That each act on our part can be viewed as an act of creation, a response to our own basic need to fill that void. As such, our lives are like canvases, revealing our souls to others, and they can be viewed as beautiful or ugly. Thank God, most of us fall somewhere in between. The canvas that was Evelyn's life was nothing short of beautiful, as is yours, my friend. And I thank you on behalf of everybody here for sharing yourself with us and for helping us to come to know Evelyn and her great gifts. As a memento of the evening, Larry, I'd like to present you with this framed poster right here for the inaugural exhibit of Evelyn I think it's a symbol of her creativity and vitality and the color with which she filled your life and now ours. So thank you, Larry, very much. Thank you. That concludes our formal program, but as you all mingle and continue to look at the artwork, I'm delighted that Larry said he'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have. Thank you all for coming and being a part of this lovely